Target hit! Nice shot! We hit the enemy! Ship is on fire! We're under attack! Enemy torpedo spotted! Destroy the enemy ship! Good job!
Hello everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we are looking, well, at a ship that I have a bit of a history with. So let me tell you a little bit of a story before we get started. A very long time ago, when I was pretty new to the game still, the British light cruiser line came out. And I was playing up to tier 6, and then suddenly I started playing the Fiji. And the way I was playing these ships was pretty much as torpedo cruisers. Because, you know, you had these single-fire torpedoes and you had them on both sides, you had a lot of them, you could just bonk into enemy ships. And then starting at tier 7, you no longer had this large amount of torpedoes. And not really knowing anything back then about things like armor zones and where to use 150mm armor piercing against more heavily armored targets, the Edinburgh really wasn't great fun. And everybody at the time said, oh no, the Edinburgh is dreadful. And we're just going, just free XP over it. And I didn't. I made my way through the Edinburgh and I did not enjoy it. And I said, I hope everyone saw that because I shall not be doing it again. So, where are we today? We're in the Edinburgh, the tier 8 British light cruiser. Edinburgh was a town class cruiser as far as I remember. Was quite busy during the war, one of the later designs of these ships. And the loss of the Edinburgh was quite interesting because the Edinburgh was in the northern routes doing convoy escort with convoys that were shipping material to the Russians or the Soviets at the time. So these northern routes, given that the Germans were occupying Norway, were obviously within range of German raiders. And especially German air reconnaissance. So the convoy got spotted. And what the Germans did was obviously relay that information to a submarine, and then the submarine was donking 2 torpedoes into HMS Edinburgh, which caused her to somewhat flood, but the sailors were on point and were able to seal off the compartment such that she wasn't immediately sinking, but the second torpedo was disabling her rudder, I believe. And she was not in a good shape. Well, the thing was that the Edinburgh wasn't just convoy escorting. The Edinburgh was also carrying the payment that the Soviets had made for all the material that they were being delivered by the Allies. She carried 4.5 tons in gold. So they didn't immediately abandon ship, but actually took her in tow and tried to get her back into safety. And the Germans were following up that attack with a couple of destroyers. And the Edinburgh was escorted by or towed by some destroyers herself, and they had also some minesweepers with her. So these guys put up a very determined fight. They actually cut the tow cable on the Edinburgh, and even though she was listing heavily and could only sail in circles, and most of her guns were disabled, she was still able to inflict enough damage to one German destroyer such that the Germans had to abandon her. But Edinburgh took another torpedo, this time on the opposite side of where she was initially hit by the submarine, and was effectively held together by string. And at that point they said, okay, we're going to have to abandon ship here. So they tried to sink her after the Germans had been driven off by the very determined attacks of the minesweepers. So we're going to have to sink her. So they tried to sink her with the guns, but not the Edinburgh's own guns, but obviously the guns on the minesweepers and destroyers. But that didn't work, so they had to expend their last remaining torpedo to sink the Edinburgh and scuttle the ship, including the 4,500 tons of gold, which much later was actually recovered. And I think it was in the 1980s when they finally managed to recover the gold, and they managed also to do it without disturbing the ship too much in her final resting place. So fascinating stories. But that brings us back to the Edinburgh in game. Now, obviously, Edinburgh is a. And actually, I'm going to have to clear that out. There's a bit of a lag here since they introduced the feature that you actually get the port, especially in the press account, because the port in the press account is rather full. So let's compare the Edinburgh to the Fiji and also to the Neptune, because that'll give you a bit more an idea why everybody says just ignore the Edinburgh. All right, let's begin with the Fiji. The Fiji obviously being the predecessor. Now, the Edinburgh gets better smokes, and that's about it. It's a couple more hit points, obviously. The armor is pretty much the same. It's non-existent. It's a British light cruiser, right? They don't have any armor. She loses out in terms of maneuverability towards the Fiji. And the guns are technically the same, the exact same guns as on the Fiji. You just get a little bit more damage and a little bit more range. The torpedoes, you get 2 quad launchers, which is a bit better than the Fiji's 2 triple launchers, which really was not much. They have better range and they do a bit more torpedo damage, but still it's 2 quad launchers. It's not enough to sink a battleship. It's not bad, but it's not enough. She does get better AA and worse concealment slightly. So like a natural progression from the Fiji into tier 8. If you compare her to the Neptune at tier 9, the Neptune gets an extra smoke screen. But the big difference about this is in the guns, because on the Neptune, the Mark 24 turrets, first of all, have a better turret rotation, and they fire 2 seconds faster. So at this point, you're sort of at the point where even if you don't know what you're doing, you can throw enough armor piercing, 150mm armor piercing, even at battleships to make a dent into them. The other reason that the Neptune is so much better is because she gets 4 quad launchers of torpedoes. And if you manage, that combined with the smoke screen, if you can manage to single fire these 16 torpedoes into a Yamato, with a couple of shots, you have a dead Yamato. So the Neptune is sort of the foreshadowing what's about to come with the Minotaur, which is probably one of the most heavily armed tier 10 destroyers in the game. I know it's a light cruiser, but have you seen the maneuverability on a Minotaur? A legendary module Minotaur has the maneuverability of a Shima. These things are hilarious, and they've got smoke screens, and you get more torps than a Shima. Same thing on the Neptune with the torps, at least. Anyway, so yeah, that sort of makes the Neptune, or made the Neptune back then, a bit of a ship that everybody was meh about. She does these mid-tier light cruisers do have their following by now, because understanding of the game has evolved, and understanding of myself of the game has obviously evolved since I last played the Edinburgh, which was 3 years ago or something. And while I absolutely utterly hated the ship back then, I no longer do. It's actually a pretty fun ship to play. So how so? Well, probably the key is that you have to switch from relying on your torpedoes, and you have the same problem in the Fiji. It's just that the Fiji is a tier 7, so you get better matchmaking. You have to switch from relying on your torpedoes towards relying on your guns. And you have to learn how to use these guns properly. Where am I looking here? We're looking at the equipment. Main battery mod 3 for precision is what I'm going with, because it's a British light cruiser. You don't want to be close to anything that can hurt you. And getting more things on target is a good thing. You could also get the turret traverse. That would be a very legitimate set as well. I'm on a full rudder shift here. because, like I said, this is a British light cruiser. You don't want to be hit by anything in the side if you can avoid it. So being able to turn the ship around, and with that setup, we're getting to a turn time of 6.24 seconds, which is excellent. I mean, that is a very, very good, very fast turnaround. So the ship maneuvers really pretty well. And you have to, because you need to constantly have your head on a swivel that you're not getting shot at by anything. I have put a level 8 commander in here. You kind of can choose if you want to take the battlefield support, but I think, if I remember correctly, I'm not sure if it was the Neptune already. One of them started getting the sonar. No, it wasn't the Neptune yet, so it must have been the Minotaur. Yes, so the Minor gets a sonar, which means if you're building towards that, you get an extra defensive AA and a second sonar, which is very much worth it. So I would strongly recommend, going back to the Edinburgh, I would strongly recommend taking the battlefield support skill, especially that it's an early skill. And if you got your captain trained up all the way, and then you realize that the Minor has a sonar, and it's a bit late and you need to reset, and it gets more expensive as you go. Free choice, you can use preheating, you can use the artillery maintenance expert. I have the air defense expert, obviously, because while they are not as good as, say, the American light cruisers or even the American heavy cruisers, I'm not sure how they compare, they're not bad, and they can, especially with the combination with the smoke in a pinch, they can do this. I am taking the Daredevil on this because I am still playing the light cruisers rather aggressively, and oftentimes, if you're low on hit points, having the extra edge in maneuverability is a good thing. In return, I'm using the Generalist, not the Recon and Surveillance, which you could, but just like in preparation for the Minor, but it's all working. All these are worthy skills to take in this tier, even the Exploit Weakness, because while you can't set fires, you could still you have a absolutely blistering fire rate going forward, so it might be still something you could take. But yeah, for Minor, with Minor in mind, you could take Recon or you can take the Generalist. Fully prepared, because you don't get any precise aiming, and very, very obviously the Mistweaver. Down the road, you do want the APCS skill, because even though you have a relatively low caliber of guns, they are absolutely hammering enemy ships with the rate of fire that you can put out, and the sheer amount of shells coming out of these things is pretty devastating. You can put a historical camo, if you are so inclined, onto the Edinburgh, and it gives you main battery range, torpedo range, traverse speed, which is probably the most important one, and surface detection as well. These things have relatively good stealth, so a lot of people actually play these on stealth builds. That's something I forgot to mention. So you could, if you wanted to, use the concealment modification and get her concealment down. So currently she's got an 8.5 kilometer surface detection. You could get that down to under 8 with that modification relatively easily. So these are all things you could do. And I know people who do like surprising things in British light cruisers. Personally, I keep the finger on the trigger most of the time, so I tend not to bother and rather go for the more aggressive maneuverability build. But you could put a historical camo on. For today, we're just going to roll with standard camo as is traditional, unless we're talking about top tier or premium ships. All right, let's get into some Edinburgh games. In the first battle, and I have to say I'm somewhat excited about these two battles because they were really nice ones. In the first battle, we're actually in a 4v4. So we're up against bottom tier, up against Taiho, double Brandenburg, and a Benson. I'm not counting the bots because, as annoying as they can be, matchmaking tends to throw them in quite aggressively. So what do? Obviously, target the Benson. Obvious other targets, well, whatever comes around the countryside. We are playing on Aurora, so with plenty of bots, we probably don't want to be, putting ourselves up too much in the front early on. But the British light cruisers have relatively good concealment. The carrier hopefully can spot the Benson. And Brandenburgs are a bit of an issue for carriers because they have very, very good AA now. These are tier 9 carriers, so it shouldn't be too bad, but we'll see what they do. So friendly carrier scouts straight south. The other carrier scouts into our cup with the fighters first. We don't have a destroyer of our own, so the carriers are just there to farm the bots at this point. But bots obviously also have AA, so they are about to lose their first fighter wing. I'm not yet using the defensive AA because I'm just going to get into a bit of a central position because these torpedo drops aren't even directed at me. So we know where the Benson is. He's over there. Well, maybe the Benson. We don't know actually because there were two destroyers. It could also be the bot. And there's some things coming on the left side. There's a, what was it, a Takao, and there's a Brandenburg. We're on the Brandenburg doing a flank run, and the carrier being busy otherwise, I'm starting to take the Brandenburg under fire. And the Brandenburg is also not looking at me. Now what you want to do, obviously, with the 150s is see if you can hit bow and stern section or superstructure. And even if you get the occasional bounce, it'll add up. So right now I'm mostly getting superstructure hits because the Brandenburg is quite a bit faster than I'm thinking. But I'm obviously kiting away, and the team calls out the Brandenburg as a target. And I agree, because he's doing a flank run, and there's nobody to stop him from getting into the capture circle and dealing with the carrier very, very briefly and very violently. So given that he's not shooting at me, I've got the torpedoes on single fire. He is turning left, so I'm dropping them on this direction. He might be able to dodge those, but he's still not shooting at me. The problem obviously is that Brandenburg also gets torpedoes, so I can't just blind rush him because I don't have the torpedo power. Now it looks like he's going to mostly dodge this torpedo spread, and he's now realized that I'm here. So now it's we've still got one torpedo in because he overturned, but now it's the time to show him the stern, and he is dodging some airdrop torpedoes there as well. So the carrier is definitely helping out. So I'm just going to smoke up by now, and the Brandenburg isn't going to have an awful lot that he can do about that. So slowing down, obviously, not trying not to stay broadside on and stationary in my smoke screen. And the thing about the Edinburgh's torpedoes is that they reload reasonably quickly. So I'm trying to gauge where the Brandenburg is going, just kind of sending a general spread in his way. But I don't even need the torpedoes at this point because the smoke is relatively long lasting, and I can probably finish him off with my guns. But just have a couple of torpedoes in. That's one torpedo hit, and the final torpedo that I sent there after he's decided on his course is probably going to be sufficient to take that thing out before he gets to spot me. And there he goes. Okay, so that's the Brandenburg dealt with. Now, meanwhile, things are getting rather chaotic, as is usual with bot battles. But there's one destroyer left, and I'm assuming that that's the Benson. And our carrier is in a very aggressive position next to that island there. So after securing this flank, and it's not the glorious duties that you do in a cruiser, but that's why you play cruiser, or that's why I play cruiser, because I really like doing the right thing for the team and ensuring that the team can win. So we've got the Brandenburg dealt with. There's a bot Takao, so we've got nothing else to shoot at. But I am heading back towards where the carrier is, because there's a defensive North Carolina here who's currently getting hammered by and yeah, don't underestimate the bots. They can also set fires and all kinds of things. So he's taking a lot of heat. There comes the Benson. So I'm dropping the NC as smoke while he can murder the bot while I'm going after the Benson. I don't need the smoke because I'm not actually being shot at by anything, and the Benson is obviously what I'm going to be targeting here. So NC is in the smoke and safe. Benson is taking out the bot Ibuki, but is obviously now coming under fire. If you're in a destroyer and you're coming under fire by a British light cruiser, you do not want to hang around broadside like that guy. So the chosen one here is going to sail around the island, and it looks like he may be after the carrier. Now he just dropped his torpedoes, and the Essex has noticed that he's there and has tried to torpedo drop him, but the destroyer has been threading the needle, which is one reason why he couldn't dodge and giving broadside. I don't know if the Essex was planning that, but look at what the Essex is doing. He's playing ring around the Rosies, or ring around the island really. I'm using my torpedo indicators to see where the Benson is going. But I'm no longer, I am spotted, right? So I can give some air cover to the Essex. But the Benson knows that I'm here, right? He knows that I'm right here, and he knows what I can do, and he knows what these guns can do. So he's chasing the carrier is running away, but surprise, British light cruiser. And he does the right thing, he goes bow in, but yeah, it's not going to help you. He had to, because he had to dodge my torpedoes, but yeah, that is not going to help you. And the carrier has survived. Carrier says thank you, you're very welcome. That's what I'm here for. I'm in a cruiser. I'm there to do destroyer hunting, AA support, and deal with the occasional flanks when that becomes necessary. So given that the enemy carrier seems hell-bent on sinking that Essex, once again I'm getting myself under the torpedo bombers, trying to do as much as I can, and he actually dodged a torpedo drop. Nicely done. We do shoot the occasional aircraft down, even though my defensive AA isn't doing an awful lot when it's on. And but we're down to, I think, one Brandenburg and the enemy carrier. So now it's just a matter of cleaning up. Now, this is not the most glorious thing, right? You're not going to come up at the top of the team. Okay, and Essex has taken out the Brandenburg. The thing is, because I saved that Essex from the destroyer, he was able to take out the Brandenburg, and I didn't have to do it myself. Carriers are useful, and helping them survive against destroyers is occasionally something that you're quite good at in a very, very fast cruiser. I mean, not that fast. She's not as fast as the Soviet cruisers, but and the smoke screens are quite nice. You can drop them on your teammates if you don't need them yourself, and you can do what you need to do. Now, obviously, if you're up against a battleship that knows what they're doing and not letting you play like you want to, it can get a little hairy at times. But it's also there's the carrier. But I think the battle is out at this point. We we can't get onto that anymore. But yeah, you can be extremely useful to your team in these things. And you can deal with things like covering flanks where it becomes necessary. And to me, this is probably the most satisfying part about playing cruisers. That you can pull these kind of moves if you're capable of dealing with everything to a degree. Then it's quite useful. But I did say I had 2 battles, so let's do another one. In this battle, it's a full. We're top tier, but it's a full battle, and we're up against Kansas, Gneisenau, Nagato, another Edinburgh, a Helena, an Asashio, and an Akizuki. And we're playing Domination on Haunted Seas. So this is the part where you are playing the more destroyery side of a light cruiser, because honestly, there's no carrier. There's no. Yes, there are destroyers, but enemy destroyers that I can take out. But I'm spawning all the way over at Sea Cup. Now I would have the option of, we do have an Aki here, and I would have an option to stick with these North Carolinas and help out in A Cup with enemy destroyer problems. But generally C is the more open capture circle here. And the Aki says he's going to C, so I'm affirming that, and I'm gonna come with him or her and head there. Because while the Aki is a very, very good gunboat, on his own, especially against an Edinburgh or a Helena, this might not capture B. I think is a bit ambitious. It might not end up too well otherwise. And I think we do have the Shapayev with us as well. So there's going to be something right there. I'm just waiting to see if anybody starts the capture progress, but nobody so far. So we'll see how this goes and what kind of opposition. Now Aki is in C, starts capturing, and okay, there's the Helena. So yes, that's why I'm here, because if the Aki gets himself spotted on, and there's the Asashio as well. Okay, so shots out, and Asashio immediately smokes up. popping out right in front of an Edinburgh and a Shapayev does that to you. It's a bit like if you were a squid and you started inking when somebody surprises you. Okay, so Helena, Asashio. The Aki seems to be heading away, so that's all right. We can deal with those two. And given that I can't see the Asashio, I'm going to start shooting at the Helena. Nice dodge from the Helena, from the Aki's torpedoes here. And I'm just dropping some torpedoes in case anybody wants to come around the corner. There is the Asashio, so the next salvo I can send after that thing. Nope, he goes undetected again. So now remember, just because you can't see the Asashio doesn't mean the Asashio doesn't exist or isn't there anymore. So I do have to be very careful about Asashio torpedoes coming in. There's also the Edinburgh, so we're now 3 versus 3, 2 cruisers and 1 destroyer. But we are holding the capture circle because both Shapi and me are in it, and while the Helena is, the Edinburgh isn't. And that also tells me that the Asashio is not inside the capture circle. I mean, I'd probably see him by now if he was, but Helena goes behind, and Cleveland Shapayev starts shooting at the Edinburgh. So our Aki is not in a happy place. He probably should be heading down south and just leave that to us. But, you know, kudos for sticking with it. Once again, using the torpedo indicator to find out where the Helena is going. Yep, there come the Edinburgh torps. Not going to hit anybody. And I still know that the Asashio is not in capture circle because it's just me and Helena. And since they're not capping, I don't think I can lob that. But once again, torpedo indicator to see where the Helena is going. Now there's two of them, but that's the Edinburgh and the Helena. So the Helena has got the Aki. And obviously has seen me, so it's starting to unload the high explosive at me. But I get the rear turrets and I'm whittling him down, just dumping some torpedoes in case he decides to go forwards or anything, or in case the Asashio pops up again. There's the Edinburgh smoke, and at this point I can start using my own smoke, so smoking up here. But this is about as far as I want to go, because Edinburgh has torpedoes and there's still an Asashio around somewhere and I don't know where he is. Meanwhile, I'm shooting at the Helena. I mean, Helena can't see me, so... oh, there's the Asashio, okay. Yeah, that is a mistake. You know that this what this smoke screen contains, right? A very angry Edinburgh. So now I'm was it hydro radar? Does anybody have a hydro radar here? Okay, Kansas. Kansas is a problem. So I'm spotted. My smoke's expiring anyway, but the Asashio has taken a beating. So parting shots at the Asashio, but now I need to get away from that Kansas because that thing hurts. So I don't want to be anywhere near that. And we are still not holding the capture circle, behind on 1 kill, and we're behind on points. Nope, actually, I think we evened up a little bit, but okay, I'm gonna have to poke around here. I still don't know where that Asashio is, but I know that he's not in the capture circle. There's Helena, and it's now Shapayev and myself in the capture circle. Oh, there are Asashio torps. Nicely played. He's torped underneath the Helena because these are deep waters, and so I'm taking 2 of those. I could have done without that, but that was an excellent play from the Asashio. And if I had a little bit less careful, I would have actually died to these torpedoes, because deep water torpedoes can go underneath. Actually, underneath cruisers they wouldn't go. Never mind. So I don't know why it worked, but it looked almost as if they went underneath the Helena. Anyway, Helena is going to be dead because now I'm spotted, but he can't react anymore. He's dead, which just leaves the Edinburgh, which means I can't go any further. And the problem is now the Kansas, and obviously that Asashio that's somewhere out there. So just a shot out at the Kansas because I can, but now I'm going to revert back into the island. Because I have a suspicion. I mean, the Asashio was last spotted going south, but he might have looped around, so I'm not quite sure. The Shapayev is duking it out with the Edinburgh. I think the Asashio may be an A-cup. But yeah, okay, we're going to have to help the Shapayev with the Edinburgh. I've still got 1 smoke left, so here you go. If you want to go into smoke and just finish the... No, you're not interested? Okay. Well then, that was a waste, but you know, you can always try. It looks like the Asashio may have gone south. So that's good news, at least I don't have to deal with that thing. And I should be out of torpedo range of that Edinburgh. So now I'm just giving the... there comes some single fire torps from the Edinburgh. I'm not sure if these were aimed at me or aimed at the Shapayev, but I don't think our Shapayev is going to win that fight, honestly. And he would actually be probably better off firing armor piercing at that Edinburgh, although he does seem to be on perma-fire. I can't poke out too much because there's a Kansas right around the corner. So bow in towards the Kansas, use the island to cover, and it gives me broadside shots at the enemy Edinburgh. Yep, Kansas can't see me. Kansas goes left, torpedo indicator to see where he's going. And the Edinburgh is relatively low, but the Edinburgh has now sunk Putin in the Shapayev. That happens. And obviously now shooting at me, but I should be able to win that gun duel because I do have a little bit more hit points than the enemy Edinburgh. So almost, but yeah, I'm wiggling the ship in reverse, and that salvo should take him out. So there he goes, and these last shots have taken a little bit more health down. But now we're 645 to 623. We've got 30 seconds. The other battleship, I know that the Asashio was south, but he might have come back. There's a Kansas right behind that island, and he is on almost full health last time I've seen him. He is in the capture circle because I am getting the capture struggle. So I need to run because we may just be doing this on points with a single capture circle. But I need to get out of here because the Kansas can one-shot me. But the Kansas isn't particularly fast. So as long as I keep the island between myself and him, and he doesn't know where I am, and the Asashio hasn't made it back in time, we should be able to win this. I just need to hold that capture circle a little bit longer. And we're 666 to 662, and we won on points. Holy Bloody hell in a handbasket. That took some doing. But yeah, there you go. The HMS Edinburgh. It's actually not a bad ship. And once you know how to play that thing, and if you enjoy this sort of more aggressive play style, and you know where to hit battleships, you're actually quite effective in taking them down. Yeah, if you know how to use your smoke screens strategically and just in general, it's actually not a bad ship. So I'm taking that back. British Light Cruiser Tier 8 is actually not that terrible. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.